We're going to learn now how to divide rational expressions. Now, you need to recall that dividing fractions means to multiply by the reciprocal of the divisor, which is really the second fraction. So, we're going to divide rational expressions in the same way. So let's review how we divide fractions. Let's see what happens if we have to divide 2/5 by 3/7. Well, basically, remember that we are going to convert this division to a multiplication. So this division gets converted to a multiplication. The first fraction stays the same, and the second fraction, which is called the divisor, gets to be flipped because we need the reciprocal. Now we have a multiplication of fractions. We can go ahead and multiply numerators. 2 times 7 is 14, and 5 times 3 is 15. Okay, we proceeded to multiply because we didn't see any common factors that could be simplified. So let's do another example. Let's see what happens when I do have common factors that can be simplified. So what happens when I have to divide 2/5 by 3/10? Okay, so the first thing I need to do is convert the division to a multiplication. I do not change my first fraction, but the second fraction needs to be flipped so I can work with the reciprocal. Now that I have a multiplication, before I multiply numerator times numerator and denominators times denominator, I had to look for common factors. Now, if you can see, the 5 and the 10 share a common factor. 5 divided by 5 is 1, 10 divided by 5 is 2. Okay, so the answer, the final simplification of the rational expression will be 2 times 2, right? 2 times 2 is 4, and in the denominator I have 1 times 3, and that is a 3. So this fraction is 4/3. Okay? Alright, so what do I need to do now when I want to divide rational expressions? I'm going to work in the same way. I'm going to rewrite the division as a multiplication. I'm going to factor the numerators and denominators completely, and then I'm going to cancel common factors. So let's do our first example and see how we're going to follow those 3 steps, which are rewrite, factor, and cancel. So the first rational expression I have is x squared minus 4 divided by x minus 3, and I'm going to divide this by 5x minus 10 divided by 8x minus 24. Okay, so let's remember the steps. The first step is rewrite the division. So I'm going to rewrite. The second step is going to be factor. And the third step is going to be cancel common factors. Okay? Then you can proceed to the multiplication. Alright, so I'm going to rewrite. So this division is going to be converted to a multiplication. My first fraction stays the same. Let me put parentheses around here, and then what I'm going to do with my second fraction is I'm going to flip it because I want to work with the reciprocal. So 8x minus 24 goes to the top, 5x minus 10 goes to the bottom. 5x minus 10, let me make sure that I have parentheses around these expressions. Okay? These parentheses came out really weird. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, now that I have it rewritten, I finished my rewriting. Now I'm going to see how to factor. So look at this expression right here. This is a difference of perfect squares. So this would be x minus 2 times x plus 2. The denominator cannot be factored anymore, x minus 3. And then right here, what I have is, I can have the common factor is 8. 8 times x minus 3, yes. And then in the denominator here, I can factor the phi common factor x minus 2. Okay? So I factor. Now it's time to cancel before I do the final multiplication. So we're going to look for common factors that can be canceled. Okay? So look at this x minus 2. Yes? And this x minus 2. They're canceled. X minus 2 and x minus 2. Okay, now let's look at x plus 3. X minus 3 and x minus 3 are canceled. Yes, so now what I have here is x plus 2. I don't see any other x plus 2, 8, and a 5. And that is in fact the answer. So the answer is going to be 8 times x plus 2. We like to place the 8 in front of the x plus 2 divided by 5. Okay, now you have to remember that you don't really need to do anything. You don't need to do the distributive property. You don't need to simplify any more. This is as long as we can go. Okay, so let's go and do another example. This is example 2. Okay, and what I'm going to have is x squared plus 5x plus 6 divided by x plus 2, and this whole expression is going to be divided by x squared plus 2x minus 3 divided by x minus 1. Again, the steps are, first step is rewrite. You have to remember that you are rewriting the division. Second step is factor, right? And third step is cancel. Okay, so let me just start over here and let me rewrite my expression. X squared plus 5x plus 6. I need two numbers that multiply, give me 6, and add, give me 5. They're going to have to be positive and positive, right? We can think about x plus 2 times x plus 3. Right, at the bottom I have x plus 2, nothing left to do with x plus 2. Yes, and I'm going to do the multiplication. So you can see that I'm actually doing the two steps at the same time. I'm rewriting and then I'm factoring. So I rewrote the first fraction, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip, right? X minus 1 goes at the top, and at the bottom I'm going to have x squared plus 2x minus 3, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it in factor form. So I have x and x, yes, and then I have plus and minus, and plus 3 minus 1, right? 3 minus 1 is 2, 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Okay, so I'm going to look up and down and see where I can simplify. Obviously, I see that x minus 1 and x minus 1, they get canceled, right? I also see that x plus 3 and x plus 3 are canceled. And then I also see that x plus 2 and x plus 2 are canceled. So finally, I can see that the final answer for this whole expression is just the number 1. So this expression is equals to 1. Okay? And these two examples are examples of division of rational expressions. Again, you rewrite step number 1. Step number 1 is rewrite, right? Step number 2, we are going to factor, right? And step number 3, we are going to cancel. So rewrite, factor, and cancel. Okay?